how much problem are you getting with people who think that the water should be delivered by the public authority and they should get it free because people in other places are getting this? I mean, is this absent from the dialogue?
But Margaret, if you're having nothing at all, something's better than nothing.
Anybody who has nothing, no water at all, is not alive. So everybody has water. The question is the convenience and the cleanliness of it. So what we're doing...
Let's say if it's not great, if the service isn't brilliant,
yeah.
Are you prepared to do something different to get it?
I certainly am, but
I'd
like to know what the reaction, what the blowback has been here, because in this country there's been a high degree of sensitivity to electrical pricing, a high degree of sensitivity to water pricing.
I'm going to give you the mic because you're going to jump on the stage.
Yeah, exactly. So has this managed to get around that particular degree of sensitivity, and if so, bravo?
Is there any resistance to that? Any resistance to the fact that it's the face of privatisation, or private organisations delivering? Is there any resistance to that at all here in South Africa?
I don't know. The Johannesburg water is working very well because the idea is that they will build the capacity and one day they will say goodbye to each other and Johannesburg water will have the capacity to run, and this was a good agreement into a very large degree. Sometimes there is a resistance. You know what I mean? I can see, I've seen the Dutch coming here and say, no, we will help you and we will build, and there is, push up, no need in a way, from point of treasury and their outlook. But when you look into Africa and you look at their bulk water supplier, many of them are actually run, by the French. Well, I mean, I actually wonder what will they do without the French in a way. So I see that as a possible model that can work. And I see franchise working in certain ways. But overall, you need to really understand, I don't think this country in principle is against private-public partnership. This is not the issue. The question is the modality of how you do it. And in some cases, we actually have the ability to provide, but what we need to center around the franchise, like Kevin said, is the ability to provide technical assistance to the operation, the ability to be able to keep the quality. Because we actually can provide water, but we have to provide water of good quality.
We've talked about the private sector as a water deliverer, and basically what came out there is there's probably new models that are more interesting, so let's pass on. Interesting. I still am curious about the actual public receptivity of this. But then we talked about the private sector as the arbiter of the value chain, which is, we haven't really brought that out enough yet because it's hugely important. I mean, if you want to stop conversation at a cocktail party, ask who the world's largest potato purchaser is. Who's the world's largest potato purchaser?
McDonald's? Walker's Crisps? McDonald's?
Pepsi.
Pepsi.
Yeah, all over the world. They buy more potatoes than anybody else. Frito-Lay's.
Walker's Crisps in the UK.
Now, if Pepsi starts to have standards for the amount of water that goes into every potato, plus the water, the amount of pesticides, herbicides, all of the rest of it, that will have a global impact, which will far outdo the impact of many, many, many countries. In fact, most countries do not have such standards at all. Most countries wouldn't try and bring them down because politically it would be almost impossible. So the value chain is much bigger and more profound than our friend from Nestle. He was being very modest about what this could actually do. And the value chain also creates a way to pass agricultural inputs down the value chain, as well as to bring commodities into the purchasing. So it's a new and really important development.
Risk and opportunity.
Yes, exactly. And it's now being used more in the brand companies that are producing food and beverages, but this could also change. There's no reason why gold companies shouldn't have a single standard, the gold standard. I'm going to get lost here. Okay, the gold standard for producing silver, if you want to. But why does it take so much more water to do one industrial activity over here, whereas somewhere else it is taking 8 times as much? So there's no particular reason why this should be restricted to agriculture. But the third area for the private sector that I'd like to ask and bring up, South Africa I think of as really quite a good water manager. The same is at the governmental level. I'm sure everybody could have a horror story about Dwarf, etc. But I mean, you know, they're basically a pretty good water. They know about the water they've got. They arbitrate, etc. In most countries of the world, the same cannot be said. Many countries do not manage their water at all, or very lightly, or imperceptibly, or not followed up with regulation, etc. One of the things that the Davos group that you talked about that invented the Super Nexus, which is the group that I was chairing, one of the things that we brought up was the idea of how does the private sector play a role in trying to agitate for better water comportment within countries. I mean, it's been clear that water does not have a high enough priority. Water management does not have a high priority. Many countries are terrified to take on the issues of water management simply because they're awfully big. If you give water to one community in a water-short country, you're usually taking this away from somebody else. It's usually a large agricultural establishment, etc. And unless you can get into the kind of innovative things we're talking about, could the business group talk a little bit about what they see as the private sector role in actually having a discussion with governments on a continuing basis about water policy? Because there's no more determining effect next to climate change about the water availability within countries than what water policy is. What's the investment policy? What's the catchment policy? What are all of these things? And these are areas which have traditionally been no-go zones for the private sector, except for the vineyard owner that says, I want to sit and discuss, you know, the catchment that is my vineyard. But I'd be really interesting to know what the experience has been. As I say, I'm asking in a country that I already think is a pretty good water manager, but if you went up in a couple of layers of countries in this continent, you would have countries that have not been effective water managers. Is it up to the private sector to try and increase that overall water management? Sorry for the long question. Well, I'm emerging from this panel much more optimistic than I usually do. From other panels, I really am so infected with the enthusiasm of people and the idea that there are many new ideas and they're being put in practice. So instead of giving you yet another lecture, I'll tell you a story. You know, when you think of where the most water wasteful places in the entire world are, I mean, where would you look? To a place that shouldn't exist, is getting bigger, uses too much energy? Saudi Arabia. Well, Saudi Arabia would be one place, but try Las Vegas is another place. You know, it's got an artificial lake. You know, if you wanted to do the list of the things that are wrong with Las Vegas, being there, etc. Dubai would be a close second, but anyway, so Las Vegas was running out of water, and they got a very zippy water manager who happens to be female. And she started talking to the private sector about what the alternatives were. And one of the ones, I'll just tell you the story that I really like. Imagine, because it's a hotel place, so every night all the sheets come off the beds and they're picked up by 6 or 7 different companies, and the companies have different trucks and they take them to different laundries, and the laundries run the water, and then the water goes down the drain, and etc., etc., etc. Aha! Consolidation. There's one of your C's. So imagine now you've got an underground laundry in Las Vegas. One truck goes around, collects all the laundry. The water never cools down, so therefore you don't have to heat the laundry, because they clean it while it's still hot. They take out the impurities and they recycle it back. And it's sort of like a car wash. You get a constant washing of all the laundry, and you've got one truck that then goes out and redelivers it to all the places. Energy cost for the whole thing plummets. Water cost for the whole thing absolutely plummets, because it's virtually a closed loop session with its own water treatment plant built into the laundry. So private sector, interesting science, etc. So that's the kind of thing that you think and you say, wow. So I thought I'd give you a wow instead of any more lectures.
We take the wow. Thank you.